but the role, or the history and the role of our fast inmate is, in 2014, there was a task force formed to develop a fast team. And they wanted it to be under the Adult Protective Services umbrella, to reach out and provide education in the community and statewide, and to make recommendations to agencies for investigation and/or prosecution. So some of the other things, they assist the caseworkers when facing barriers or stalls in the process. So some of our cases are done with our regular APS, and then we get called in to either consult or because most of our cases also involve some other element of abuse, physical abuse or neglect. So that's how we might get called in. We might do the case together. We might, as Karen knows, she would have a lot of cases where her coworkers will ask her to, can I explain this, and can you take it over? So we work with law enforcement, district attorneys, the banks to prepare cases for litigation. We advocate for restitution to victims of financial abuse and exploitation. So the main FAST begin to review FAST referrals in June of 2016. And the legislature approved 2 FAST positions, and then 2 additional positions were repurposed and basically taken from the regular APS lines. So we have 4, I'm the supervisor and I'm out of the Augusta office, and I have 1 person in the Biddeford office, which is now moved to Portland, and then we have 1 in the Augusta area who does 9 counties, and then we have 1, if you know anything about Maine, Aroostook County is a very big county. It's our biggest one, and she also has to do 4 other ones around the Bangor area. So we're spread thin, but they all have their little GPSs and their maps and their traveling. Sometimes they have to, especially the one out of the Bangor office, has to go up and spend the night in such a group on a day or 2. So one of the things that's been most beneficial to us, I think, is what I call our FAST member agencies. So every other month we meet as a group with, we have the Office of the Maine Attorney General, we have some of our folks from our own DHH office, Legal Services for the Elderly, Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, Office of Securities, District Attorney's Office, and state and local law enforcement. We have someone from the Maine State Police, and we also have someone from the Brunswick Police Department, and then we have somebody from the Department of Justice. So we get together every other month and kind of brainstorm. The investigators will bring cases that they're stuck on to them, and they can kind of give us their input. We try to, we do have confidential agreements, signed, but we try to de-identify as much as possible if they don't need to know. So through August 2019, I've assigned 211 cases to my investigators. So they're very busy, and they're going a lot. It's just hard to keep up. So some of the barriers we found is sometimes when we have to close a case, we worry about what's going to happen, and we've been able to, there's a new pilot program that in Cumberland and Aroostook County we can offer them an advocate to come in after we, if they're agreeable to it. So that's just starting with the pilot program. Another thing is sometimes the banks have had a hard time with our releases, the local and the state and the federal, and they don't always match up. And so that's been something that it's been a variant to us a little bit, but we're working on it, and we hope to get some to work on that. And again, we find convincing a victim to even consider pursuing charges. I mean, sometimes they don't even want to say that it is a problem. So that's been one of our barriers. I think the goals, well, we all in, our committees and our investigators, we all have a shared goal of protecting vulnerable adults from financial exploitation and trying to put a stop to it as quick as possible. Each agency sort of has a different role and looks at things kind of from a different lens, but we all have the same goal of trying to stop it. And through our every other month meetings, we've built some very strong relationships with our member agencies. They are more apt to, if we reach out to them, like the day after the meeting, or, they have been very helpful to us. And I have a couple on speed dial that are just, I'm gonna call and check in and see what they say. So that's been invaluable for us. And we've just grown these relationships, and we sometimes have people call us and say, hey, I want to be on this. This sounds like something that we'd like to do. So that's our path.
We're happy to entertain a couple questions now, and then there'll be opportunity for other questions. Sunny, Cheryl?
Start with history.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Steinberg. I'm the director of the Senior Law Project at New Hampshire Legal Assistance, which is our state's civil legal aid program. And the Senior Law Project is specifically for persons 60 years of age and older. Financial exploitation is one of our priority areas, so that's why I'm involved. And I guess maybe not officially the co-chair of the FAST, but I am kind of for all intents and purposes the co-chair. I was officially the co-chair before with Karen Cornell. But to give you some of the history of our FAST, it sprung out of a broader group, a coordinated community response team that was generated from a federal grant that the Attorney General's office received back in 2011. So part of the requirements for getting that grant was to create the CCR, which probably a lot of you are familiar with. And rather than it being statewide, they decided to start out a regional way, and it just focused on Merrimack County, which in our state is Concord, New Hampshire, the state capital, and the middle part of the state. It became pretty clear, so the general goal and purpose of that group was elder abuse, in general, not just financial exploitation, but many of the members were aware that financial exploitation was a big problem, and they heard of these FAST groups that had popped up in other parts of the country, and thought that we should probably try to create one on our own. So, and I wasn't even involved in the very beginning, but I heard about it because I had been getting involved in some of these financial exploitation cases and was very frustrated that these things were being passed off as being civil problems. And there was this one case in particular, this woman took advantage of this woman in a mobile home park, and I heard that she was doing it to all kinds of other people, and there was no repercussions for her, and I said, this is wrong, we've got to do something. So I somehow got connected with someone that was involved in this coordinated community response team, and about 2011, they created this FAST, and we started out, originally just trying to do some education and outreach, and then we also tried to delve into doing some of that case review. It didn't really work out. We really weren't ready for that yet. But then it came along, one of the people participating in the group was a legislator. She's like, I'd really like to do some legislation to try to help address this problem. And we're like, great, let's create, I was feeling at the time like we really should just have some kind of a criminal law that just focuses on financial exploitation to kind of send the message that this is not a civil problem, so that police couldn't say, this is a civil, So we said, great, well, we'll give it a shot. We'll start out, we're probably not gonna be successful the first session. We'll give it a go. And so all of us got together in our group, and as you heard, Karen Cornell being one of them, and we put forward this bill, and remarkably, it passed the first time around. So we ended up being very successful. So the group was very engaged, and it really helped, and the law went into effect in 2015. So we had been so focused on that bill, and the FAST itself had we were having those kind of regular meetings like we had so much about education outreach so much, but we did decide to focus on, once that bill was passed, was to do a summit. And so we turned out in April of 2016, we ended up having this statewide summit, and that was very successful. We had a very good turnout. And the Attorney General's office came, and they announced how they were going to reconstitute the Elder Abuse and Exploitation Unit. It was very exciting. And we also tried to do at that point regional meetings. That was part of it, to try to get groups going in different parts of the state. And this person who at the time was the coordinator, she did it all. And unfortunately, it just didn't seem to pan out. There wasn't enough, I guess, will on the local partners' parts to get regional groups going. I think maybe one did. So after all that work was done, we kind of came back, and that person who was coordinating everything, she finally retired. She moved to Maine, and she still wants to help out, but she wasn't going to be able to do all the great work she had done before. So we decided, well, we really want to keep this FAST initiative going, and so we reconvened, and Sunny became a co-chair, and Karen Cornell is co-chair still. And we decided to make it statewide, because one of the we were hoping we could have a statewide FAST, and then have maybe still work on trying to get local groups together. So that's been about since 2017. And we did create a mission statement out of that, which was, again, we decided, because we are all volunteers, we have limited capacity, and we didn't have a grant-funded coordinator anymore. So we said just to focus on outreach. So it's to increase awareness of elder financial exploitation in New Hampshire, with the hope of mitigating the exploitation. So that's the mission, or our goal for now. And we've been struggling a bit to get things going again. We do have very membership. We have someone from our Adult Protective Services, Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services. Obviously, the Attorney General's office is involved. We have a U.S. Attorney who's the Elder Justice Coordinator for our state that participates. Someone from the Bureau of Securities Regulation was coming, but he hopefully we'll get a replacement for him. We have several banks and other financial institutions, and you'll have from Debbie Norris speaking next, and she's one of the members that represents that group, and our New Hampshire Bankers Association. And more recently, we have someone from the Alzheimer's Association has joined, and they're very interested in this issue. So if you haven't reached out to people in the Alzheimer's Association in your state, I would recommend doing that. And then we have some law enforcement. I think that's one area we probably would like to get a little more representation. Also, county attorneys, we don't really have any real active participation. So we've been trying to get that going. And the thing we've done most recently is we have gotten some funding to do public service announcements, both on TV and radio, and so we have a subcommittee going for that, and there's a lot of people that are enthusiastic, so that's getting people excited about getting an actual project done, and that's totally within our mission to increase awareness. So I also missed when we did the convening, obviously, that was another big part. I mean, that's also kind of a a response to that, because for our convening, the number one area that people thought needed to be addressed was community education. So taking off from that, that's why we decided to focus on that. And actually the convening too, I meant to point out, was another way we wanted Jennifer and her folks to come in to help us try to guide us to how we can go forward with this. And it was very helpful, and we're trying to implement those recommendations, but that does get to the barriers, which I would say is that we don't have a funded person to help us do all this stuff. So we have, Sunny is like busy running around the state talking to victims and going to court trials, and I have my caseload and everything else I have to do for my other job or my actual job, and everybody else, so that's, I mean, I know you can all relate to that. We all are doing our, all this other stuff in the meantime, so, ideally what we would really like to see is to have someone that as a paid position be the coordinator, and I think that would make all the difference in the world to really help us get some of this stuff going, to get the momentum going more, and get more members participating. But all in all, I mean, I think we're doing okay, and we're still working on it. And we are thinking, there's VOCA funding that's available, and I've been like a broken record on this committee I'm on, that we need to have some of that money go for elder abuse, because we don't, the other thing in New Hampshire is we don't have any standalone entity. I know there's one in, I believe it's Maine, but you have the, is it Maine, or is it Vermont? I get confused. I know there's one of your states has like the Institute for Elder Abuse or something like that. It's called, does it ring a bell? No? Okay, I know there's one, somebody, maybe I'm calling the wrong name. Okay, well anyway, but there's nothing like that in New Hampshire. So I mean, all the different entities do their part, but there's no single entity that's really just focusing on that. So all the more reason we need someone that can just really help us foster all the resources and get things going. So anyway, hoping that maybe if we could get some funding for that, it can help us strengthen our infrastructure.
So I'm sitting here feeling incredibly jealous of Maine with their paid
Oh, I know,
persons.
exactly.
Sorry. But yeah, as Cheryl was saying, we struggle with how to keep momentum going and how to keep going forward. And they had their convening, and then things were just, people lost momentum. And then we picked it up again, and we had the convening, and we had energy there again. And I think Cheryl's completely right. We've been very fortunate in our Bankers Association getting very involved, and the Association for Credit Unions has also gotten very involved with us. So we have the financial representation there. We do want more law enforcement, but it's sort of, we're also the joy of a small stage where, like, we came here, and through our connections, through our work, and through our connections through FAST and everything, I think we discussed 2 or 3 cases at a minimum while sitting at lunch, so I guess we do our case management the way we do it. But I think our big hurdles are exactly that. We want more than just sort of our local people involved. We want our state involved. And for the Attorney General's perspective, we do go all over the state prosecuting, but we don't necessarily have those connections with our banks throughout the state or with our credit unions throughout the state. It's very sort of localized. But then again, when we pull the people together for the convening, what they really want to do is the public outreach. And it did, as I said, these convenings are great because it gets people motivated, it gets people excited and everything else. And so they did. Cheryl wrote a grant with the help of a friend. We got contributing money, matching money from credit unions and from a bank, bankers, I believe. And so we have a little bit of money now to put out these public service announcements to fight the sort of scams, the financial exploitation aspect, and to make it real. And they're a great committee, and they've been going since the convening, and they're really doing some very, very motivated and fun stuff. So we're laughing at lunch. We're going to go back now and say, and by the way, maybe we should do the conference next year. So start booking your calendars, folks. You're going to New Hampshire, we hope. But how do we form that subcommittee? And unlike you folks, we are all doing full-time jobs, and we're squeezing this in. But then we question, we meet quarterly, and we all go, well, maybe it should be every other month, or maybe quarterly is too much. We constantly question how to do this and how to do it right, and how to keep everything moving along. But I will say that I think our representation at the table is decent, but then again, we invited the council of churches and they were very interested, but nobody showed up. We've invited people saying, hey, we think this would be a good fit for you, BA, things like that. And it's hard getting people to the table. It seems once we get them, we can hook them, but it's just getting them there. So that's some of the struggles we face. I do think in light of the fact that we're, just this small group, we've done some good stuff. And we do go out and train bankers and credit unions, and then they in turn are talking to us a lot. They're calling us, they're collaborating with us and things like that. But on the educational front, which was big in our state, that's what people wanted. We have managed to do a tremendous amount of outreach. I think I'm presenting with Cheryl at least once this month. I'm presenting with the EAS at least twice this month. Presenting with Brian and the Stratford County Sheriff's Department Wednesday. So we're getting the word out. We're working hard at doing that education and network aspect. But if any of you folks have ideas, thoughts, we would love this to be more of a conversation where we can hear what you guys need or what you guys think we should be doing better or more of. Thank you.
So I'm Tori Lloyd, and you've heard from me all day. I started this work as an investigator with Adult Protective Services in 2011, and so that is what leads me to the work that we do today and my passion for this work every year. I started, we had a financial exploitation unit. It was short-lived, but Adult Protective Services during my time there. And I initially reached out to California, Ventura County, Judy Gates, who had been running their financial abuse specialist team for 10 plus years, who was a tremendous mentor and really, I would say, helped launch Faster Vermont. And during that time, really started the networking piece and bringing financial institutions, security officers, primarily from the banking industry, Department of Financial Regulation, the Attorney General's Office, both the Consumer Division as well as the Consumer Protection Department. We have and continue to have Office of Public Guardian, Adult Protective Services. Law enforcement has come and gone from the table. I don't believe it's for lack of interest, but time being the biggest barrier has been my experience. And so for 3 years, I chaired FAST, and we grew it. And Faster Vermont is a statewide organization. Vermont is a small state in some ways, certainly by population, but it takes quite a bit of time to travel from north to south. And so one of the things that we have struggled with throughout the history of FAST is how to get people to the table, in-person meetings, and do virtual meetings work. In fast forwarding to now, and as a result of the April convening in Burlington, our FAST, we have been historically meeting quarterly in Montpelier, which is a somewhat central location for individuals. And then everyone has the opportunity to join through GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar. They can join and see the slides and have a presence at the meeting. What we learned was that was not frequently enough, and in 2020, meetings will be all virtual, and we're going to be meeting monthly, the second Thursday of every month. And so one of the lessons learned is that even if there isn't, what I heard from our membership is even if we didn't have an agenda, which was what I always struggled with, is making sure we had speakers, because the bulk of our meetings were educational and an opportunity to ask questions of the people who were at the table or on the phone line, was did we have enough? I wanted to make sure that time was well used for participants, that the meetings were met everyone's needs, and that to the extent we had a topic that was relevant to everybody who was joining us. And what I heard back was people really wanted to have the opportunity to touch base monthly. And as a result of our April convening, I heard from members, regular meetings was more important, and it goes to bear out, one of the things that came out of that was determine how we can move the network forward. And one of the take-homes was more frequent meetings. I reached out to CFPB and Jennifer about the convening because although FAST of Vermont has been around for, what are we on, 7 years or so, membership has ebbed and flowed, and we tried to reconfigure it to make sure that members' needs are met and that the resources provided are beneficial. And so what we have found is that we needed a shot in the arm, so to speak. I mean, echoing what Sunny and Cheryl has said is that there's the groundswell that happens with an event and then wanting to really capture that and move it forward. And as a result, the TriState Conference was a way to really bring practitioners, what I call financial exploitation responders, in one place to have that time and to be reinvigorated, if you will, because what I have found is that this is an add-on for individuals, that most people have to make time for this in addition to their regular jobs, which I think sometimes can feel tiring, and that is not what we wanted. Everyone is passionate about this issue, and we wanted to make sure that people had the support that they needed in order to move the issue forward and to really make a difference for victims and their outcomes. So I touched on the barriers. We don't have, FAST of Vermont doesn't have a dedicated staff person. It's myself and my staff that help support these meetings. And so funding for a coordinator has been a challenge, and seed money for that has been elusive, if you will. And so that's one of our goals for 2020 is to be able to have a dedicated coordinator for that role, that are sending out all the emails and the minutes and frankly the dial-in information for the virtual meeting. So while it may seem, I don't want to say easy, but uncomplicated to put together a virtual meeting, there are actually quite a few pieces that need to be put together in order to have it come off well and appropriately timed. So it's one of the challenges that we continue to work on. But 2020 is going to be a big year for FAST of Vermont. We're going to, as I said, be meeting monthly, virtually, and we're also going to be having networking sessions in 5 parts of the state to try and bring people together in a more informal setting in between the meetings. So I think I've covered it. And I think we're happy to open it up for questions for any of the FAST, history, goals, barriers.
Hey, Mark, question about Maine. Are your Mufuku people involved with FAST as well? Because I don't think I heard you say that they were, so I'm just curious if they are
No,
or not.
we've had the Medicare fraud person come and speak at our team meeting, but they don't come on a regular basis.
Okay.
But now that they've come and given their spiel, he left his cards, and he answers the phone now when we call.
Yeah, this seems to be, from our perspective, when I first started, we did a lot of drug diversion cases, and now we're trying to get away from that. We're starting to deal more with financial exploitation, because that seems to be the biggest problem we deal with in the state now, and I think we're addressing. We're trying to